Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome game from the 2008 FIDE Grand Prix in Baku, Azerbaijan. It's a game between Teimour, Rajabov and Magnus Carlsen. It comes as a suggestion from an excellent subscriber, Isaac Halamish, and a lot of you sent me suggestions via email, probably due to my previous video stating that it was a suggestion from an excellent subscriber. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed that and I'm going to go through all of them. Even though your suggestion might not come immediately, whenever I have the time or there's no current tournament going on, I'm going to go to my email, to my YouTube, to my Twitter, and I'm going to write in the search bar hashtag suggestion. Whoever used that it will come up. So no worries if your game doesn't come up right away. But this game really really an awesome one, as it's a fierce attacking game and a lot of stuff happens. So let's check it out and see was it a successful attacking game or perhaps not. So Rajabov has the white pieces and he opens with e4. Let me just check if I have, I think it's here. So Rajabov opens with e4, we have c5 by Magnus, knight to f3, d6, and here d4. Rajabov strikes in the center. We have c captures on d4, knight captures, and the knight to f6. So nothing out of the ordinary here, knight to c3, and Magnus opts for the dragon variation of the Sicilian with g6. We have bishop to e3, preparing to counter the dragon with queen d2, f3, g4, h4, h5, and so on. So bishop g7, and now f3, strengthening the e4 pawn and preparing kingside expansion. We have knight to c6 by Magnus and queen to d2. So this is all fairly standard dragon stuff. We have castles and bishop to c4 now. We have bishop to d7 and now bishop back to d3. Nowadays castling is the go-to move, but the bishop to b3 also probably fine. Maybe not on the absolute highest level, but you know, for us mortals, I'm pretty sure it will do. So rook to c8 and now h4. Rajabov starts expanding on the king side. g4 h5 is coming. So Magnus prevents it. We have h5. This is a very important move when defending against those flank attacks. You want to control that g4 square as much as possible, like Magnus is doing here. We have queenside castles and now knight to e5. Now, nothing out of the ordinary here. This is all, again, very standard stuff. The knight is coming to c4, where you're going to force white either to give up the dark square bishop, which is a very strong attacker. At some point, white always wants to exchange this bishop for this well, basically dragon bishop, and if not, then you're going to have to give up your light square bishop and the black will achieve something here. So bishop to g5 and now rook to c5. Putting some pressure along the fifth rank, and it's also a very useful defending rook, because at some point if white feels like going aggressive, g4 is coming, then h5, and you kind of want to have that rook well, helping out with the defense along the fifth rank. So king to b1, always a nice prophylactic move. You almost always have to play this. Like, if you don't know like exactly what you're doing, you have to play king to b1. You're gonna lose so many games if you don't play this, but you know, don't trust me, do not play king to b1 and see what happens. I mean, it's the absolute truth. So here we have rook to e8. And rook to e8, you kind of have to defend this e7 pawn. If you try something like queen a5, which kind of makes sense, you want to bring the other rook to c8, you easily run into something like captures, and knight d5. Now the bishop is under attack. If you move the bishop, then the pawn is weak. Also the queens are getting traded off, and the white will just have a very, very pleasant position here. So instead, after king to b1, we have rook to e8 by Magnus, and now, although you could go for bishop to h6 right away, Teimour goes for g4. And okay, what's his idea here? The g4 square, like we've said, is defended 4 times. So what's with the g4? Well, it's a pawn sacrifice. Magnus accepts it, and now h5. So giving up some material to open up lines. The knight captures on h5, and now, of course, rook captures on h5, giving up the exchange as well. We have g captures on h5, and now queen to h2, shifting the queen over to the attack. You want to play queen to h2, get rid of this pawn, play rook to h1, and hopefully try and checkmate the black king. There is a game from 2011 that's 3 years after this game was played. Anish Giri played it against Bosch in 2011 Netherlands Team Championship, where he played knight to d5, and he was able to win that game, even though knight to d5 is not considered the greatest of moves, but he was able to to outwit him. So here, queen to h2, like we've said, still not a new move, and now knight to g6 by Magnus. The knight will now help out with the defense on the king side, and here there is one move, rather this move was played in 1995, knight to d5 was played, but here we have queen captures on h5 by Teimour, and it is now only as of move 19 that we have a completely new game, but also a move that was never played again after this game in 2008. So here, you have to be very careful. Rook to h1 is coming, like we said, so Magnus goes for the absolute strongest move, and that is queen to a5. Now the queen and the rook, remember that rook to c5 move where we said the rook might be useful in defending the fifth rank. Well, the bishop is hanging now, and Teimour needs to do something about this. He pushes f4, and this is not a problem because, of course, he wants to do this. Well, also f5 is coming. So what can you do here? You might think, well, there's the obvious knight captures here, because then if, well, you capture this, then the queen falls, but the f7 pawn is hanging as well. That's the problem. So here you're just getting checkmated. King h7, rook to h1 check, and that's it. Doesn't really matter what you play. Knight h5, rook captures will be checkmate. So instead of this, after this f4, we have rook captures on g5, and this is again the absolute best idea. You have to give back the material. If you ignore this, if you try to go for some sort of an attack, try and go for the c3 knight, then f5 just wins the game on the spot for Rajabov. There's not much you can do here. Knight e5, you're going to play rook to h1, and that's it. If rook captures on c3, you're going to ignore this. Queen h7 check, king to f8, now bishop h6, and that's it. You cannot capture, because if you capture, this is checkmate. You can't not capture, because then just queen to h8 is checkmate. The bishop is pinned, so you're not going to be able to capture that. So there's really not much you can play here. You could prolong the game a little bit, play something like e6, but doesn't really matter. You're still getting checkmated here. Or rather, if king here, you can just go bishop g5 check. Either way, king e8, queen to g8 will also be checkmate. So, like I said, after queen to a5, f4 was played, but now Magnus goes for the absolute strongest, rook captures on g5. And now, only now, do we get f captures on g5 and e6. And now, e6 is a really important move, because queen captures on g6 is, well, the threat here. The f pawn is pinned, so you will not be able to capture back. So e6, but now Teimour just happily continues sacrificing material. Or rather, maybe it's not a sacrifice, since it can't really... you're gonna win it back right away. But here you could go for queen captures on g4. Teimour feeling adventurous, he goes for knight to f5. And okay, like we said, if this pawn moves, queen captures on g6 is happening, but you don't really have an option of not capturing. The d6 pawn is hanging, the rook can capture, the knight can capture, and I mean, it's just a very dangerous piece. So here Magnus captures, queen captures on g6, now threatening to pick up the f7 pawn, then go rook to h1, that would be game over. So bishop to e6 by Magnus, the absolute strongest move, and now queen to h5, getting the queen out of the way, because now, while the bishop is on e6, you're actually threatening f captures on g6. So queen to h5, and now comes a move that's really, well, interesting. After all of this, Magnus just picks up a pawn, f captures on e4. He says, you've got nothing here, I'm gonna grab this pawn. Now I have two passed pawns, and if you don't have a winning attack, then I'm just gonna win this game. And the problem is you cannot capture the pawn. If you capture the pawn, I mean, the knight will just hang, so there's that. Obviously, rook captures on e4 is coming, and now black is completely winning. So after f captures on e4, we have rook to f1. Now, again, with some very sneaky ideas. Problem is, if Magnus goes for something like bishop captures here, which makes sense, you are, I mean, up in material, you have two beautiful passed pawns. The problem is now the f7 pawn is hanging, and if you do this, then queen captures on g4. You lose one of them. And now, whether you're going to win this or not, even though you sort of have a interesting position, it's not really going to do all that much. If you go bishop captures on c3, b captures and queen captures, then, well, queen captures on e4, and now look at the position. Rook to h1, queen to h7, a lot of very interesting stuff on the board, and if anyone is going to win this, it's definitely white. So instead, after rook to f1, we have queen to e5. Again, the absolute strongest move for Magnus, completely paralyzing this knight, because queen captures on b2 will be checkmate. And you're asking, what do you want to do here? And now bishop captures is met with queen captures, so the f7 pawn is nicely protected. So instead, after queen to e5, we have rook captures on f7. Rajabov really going all out here, asking Magnus, what do you want to do here? And again, you cannot capture, because if you capture, it's made in 3. Queen captures, king has to move, and now queen h5 check, and that's it. This square is covered by the bishop. You have to block with the bishop, and then queen captures on h6 will be checkmate. So after rook captures on f7, Magnus again goes for the strongest idea. Bishop captures on b3. You could also throw in the in-between rook to f8, but it's kind of the same idea. So bishop captures, a captures on b3, and now again, Magnus says this position is now just winning for me. I'm just going to play g3. But the g3 is not an easy decision to make, because you might think, why not play just d5, d4, and that's it? But you could run into trouble. I'm just showing you all of these lines to show you how rich the position is. For example, if you try something like d5 and threaten d4, rook d7, and black is not winning this game anymore. The problem is, if you continue pushing your pawns, then the knight can come to d5, and that's it. There's no defense against knight to f6. Just to show you, just knight f6 check, and that's it. You don't have anything. If king here, this is checkmate. The king cannot go anywhere here. You have to give up the queen, then you're just lost. And of course, if bishop captures, then this is just very nice checkmate along the light squares. So after a captures on b3, Magnus goes for the absolute strongest idea, and that is g3. And now king to a2. Rajabov sidesteps with the king. We have rook to f8 now. Again, the absolute strongest. If you continue with the g2, then you allow, some trickery here. For example, rook captures on b7. And now again, your light squares are very weak. You're going to be able to, check the black king as much as you want. And there really is no way for black to win this anymore. It's simply not possible. You'd have to go for something like queen a5, and then let's say knight a4, queen goes back to e5, and not much is happening here. If you give white any move, then just this is enough to force a perpetual. So instead, after this king to a2 move, like I said, rook to f8, absolute strongest. And you also have to be careful if the queen ever moves here. I mean, just captures, and queen captures here. So this does make sense. Rook to f8, and now finally Rajabov has to trade. We have rook captures, king captures, and queen to g4 now. Keeping an eye on the pawn here, not allowing the pawn to be pushed to g2. But now e3 is coming. We have g6 by Rajabov, and now Magnus does something a bit too premature. It's a wonderful position for black. You have one pass pawn, two pass pawn. The knight cannot move at all because this is checkmate. But Magnus rushes with his next move a bit too quickly. He should have improved the position a little bit. He played e2, and now the victory is no longer possible. However, it's no longer possible only if Rajabov plays the absolute strongest idea. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this absolutely best idea for Rajabov while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the only move that doesn't lose the game. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's queen to d7. Queen to d7, yes, not anywhere else, not here, not here, not here, not here, or here, or anywhere. Queen to d7, and that's it. If you're wondering why is this a draw, well, the problem is if you continue pushing, let's say you bring a queen into the game, it doesn't matter, just queen to f7 checkmate. So obviously you can't bring the queen into the game, you have to move the king or play something. If you play queen to e7, now you're gonna lose use the light squares because the pawn covers all of the light squares, and well, Magnus has pieces on the dark squares, so you're going to use this to your advantage and just check all the way, to repetition along the light squares. So here you're going to play queen c8 check, queen e8, you're going to go queen to f5 check, king to g8, now queen d5 check. You cannot block because the pawn covers this. So king h8, you're going to go queen h5 check, then you're going to repeat queen to d5 check, or if, it doesn't really matter. As long as you do it like this, you can always achieve some sort of a checking pattern. Even queen to h1 check is possible, then you can go back, queen back to d5 check, queen f5 check. King to g8, again, you're going to repeat queen to d5 check, and there's just no way to get out of checks. So this was one way for Teimour to achieve this, but he didn't do it. After this e2 move, he played queen to f3 check. But for those of you who are wondering why not capture the pawn, well, obviously if you capture with the knight, then queen captures is checkmate. Queen captures is a bit different, but it still loses by force. Queen captures, knight captures, and then just g2. And the threat now being bishop here. And then if knight captures, you just bring a queen into the game. So white needs to stop this, but now bishop here. And there is no defense against this, because let's say you bring this, and then you just bring your queen into the game. White will have to trade. And of course, this is a completely winning endgame for black. So after king to a2, rook to, wrong position. After this e2 move, like we said, queen to f3 check was played by Rajabov, but this is not the same as the queen to d7 move, because now we have king to e8, queen to f7 with check, and king to d8 now. We have queen to g8 check, king to d7, queen to f7 check, and queen to e7 now. Blocking, and there's not much you can do here. Queen f5 check was played, king to d8, now queen to a5 check, b6, and now queen to d5, but it's not a problem. Magnus says that this is completely useless. He plays e1 queen check, just a queen, and now we have a few checks. Queen a8 check, king to d7, queen b7 check, and now of course king to e8. And now after this king to e8 move, it was in this position on move 40 that Teimour Rajabov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You're just black is up a queen, and there's no way to continue this. I mean, you could throw in a few checks, and it's very interesting. You could play something like this, then queen to c6 check, queen to d7, queen to a8 check. You're gonna move the king. Even a knight to d5 check is possible. King e6, knight f4 check, and king f5. But at some point you run out of checks, and now you're just gonna have to resign. I mean, you are down a queen. So yeah, after king to e8, Rajabov resigned, and an excellent victory for young Magnus Carlsen, who got shared first in the tournament. Let me just check the standings. Sorry about that. Something got messed up with the standings, but yeah, here they are. So he got shared first in the standings in the Baku Grand Prix. There you have it. These are the standings with Wang Ku and Vugar Gashimov. With 8 points out of 13. So you can see it was a very strong tournament, and no one was like on 11 out of 13. So, you know, everyone was able to beat everyone. Then you have it with 7.5, Grishuk and Mamedyar, with 6.5, Svidler and Adams, with 6, Karakin, Kamsky and Rajabov, with 5.5, Chaparinov and David Navara, and Etienne Bacro and Ernesto Inarkiev with 5 out of 13. So really, definitely a very, very strong tournament. So yeah, once again, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for such a wonderful suggestion, and I'm very thrilled that so many of you decided to send me suggestions via email. It's really awesome. You know, really, I'm only one person. I can't always find the nicest games, so really thank you for that. And if you've enjoyed this clash between Rajabov and Carlsen, I think so far I've done 3 games. Between them, so I will put 3 links in the description below. 2 of them are from the 2013 Candidates tournament that 2 of them played together, and the one is that very sneaky game where Magnus trolled him with that a4 move. So if you haven't seen that, it's also going to be the first link in the description below. So yeah, and for such a wonderful game, he attacked like a madman. You all know what that means. When someone attacks like a madman, really gives us the joy of watching such a game. We of course will award Rajabov with the Mr. Barnes head. So there you have it. The Barnes head has been awarded, and you know, even though you haven't won, you played a brilliant attacking game, and that's that's what matters in the end. So yeah, once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Bradford Akin, Matthew Webb, Aaron Garipur, K.S. Dillon, and Grant Miller for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.